Now, I'm going to tell you a story along those lines. The piece that we're getting ready to do this August, I wrote the first draft in 1994. 1994, when I went out to the American Film Institute. Yeah. I had the experience when I was, I think, 10 or 11 years old. That was the nexus or the seed of it. There was a summer where, wow, it's hard to even talk about, but I grew up in Long Branch, New Jersey, and there was a lot of racism in that town. So my dad, God bless him, the second to the last day of school, had my mom peck my brother and I for the 3 weeks. And he woke us up at 4 in the morning, and he took us to work with him in New York City. My dad was a publisher, and his plant was on 25th Street. And across the street from his plant was this place called the Hudson Guild. And they ran a summer camp, something called the Fresh Air Fund in New York City. So he took us to work and walked us across the street, and there were probably 30 buses lined up on the street. And all the kids were Latino and African American. And it was, have fun, you're going off for the summer. And we were the only white kids there. And it was a very impactful experience that we had. And I've extrapolated from that, but it was profound because it changed the way I looked at the world. It changed the way I looked at everything. And you know, it was a big gift that I got. So from my dad. But I wrote about it. My mother is from Dublin, Ireland, and she was a professional ballet dancer when she met my father. And one of his accounts was the ballet company that she was working for, and he was standing on the side of the stage, and she literally fluttered off stage and bumped into my father, and that's how they met. They got married, and, you know, 7 kids later, here we all are. So I kind of combined a lot of experiences that I had in my life that I wanted to make a comment about, you know, kind of express how I see things and how I feel about things. So I wrote the first draft in 1994. It got me into the American Film Institute, and way back then, it had a little bit of heat on it, and it went out to some actors. I got some good notes, I got some bad notes, but most of the people who read it were like, this is an ABC after-school movie. I didn't think that. Or this is a movie of the week, 60-minute movie. You know, MOW, they call it, 60 minutes, basically. Movie of the week, you've seen them on the channels. This is before Netflix and all that. I didn't agree with that. So I just kept writing it, and I just kept sticking with it, and I kept trying to get it done, okay? But through some of my activities, I met a producer, and it was to the earlier point of what if you don't have a current draft and you have a treatment. I met a producer at a premiere who asked me if I knew of any good projects, and I said, well, funny you should ask. I was reviewing a film that he and his partner, his directing, producing partner, made. The name of the film is American Fango, F-A-N-G-O. It's probably, I think it's playing in Charleston right now. It's won, I think, 12 of 14 festivals that it's been in, Best Picture. And I loved the picture. So I had to review the film, gave it a good review. There was a reception afterwards. And I wasn't planning, I wasn't looking to pitch to these guys. I wasn't thinking that I was going to leave there with a deal. But there was a reception afterwards, and it turned out that the director, whose name is Gabriele Altobelli, is from Rome, is a retired ballet dancer. So when I pitched it to him, he absolutely loved it. And 3 weeks later, we had a handshake deal, and 4 weeks later, we have a contract, and now we're casting. And it's very exciting, but it took me this long. But I wasn't going to just stop doing it. You know, as long as you're still here, what have you got to lose? You find ways to keep going. I've had other jobs as a writer between this project, and I've adapted a couple of novels for novelists that have come very close to production, haven't gotten into production. When I worked in Hollywood, I was a reader, and I used to do what they call coverage. So It was just in my blood, in my blood. And so you keep going. And I think one of the mistakes that screenwriters make when they begin, at least some of them, people romanticize the idea of being involved in the movies. And why not? Who wouldn't want to work on a movie lot? Who wouldn't? To me, it's a very high calling, and it's the most fun you can have at work. There's nothing like it. But to get to that is just an incredible amount of work. But the mistake that a lot of people make is they romanticize the culture of it and the spoils of it, and it becomes about the walk down the red carpet, which is obviously a nice thing to think about and wonderful if you have it happen to you. You think about the photo ops and having people make a big deal over you, and they fall in love with that aspect of it. But I think the best way that I can explain this to you is that I didn't learn how to write screenplays because I wanted to be a movie guy. I had to learn how to work in the movies because there's this story that I've wanted to share. And the only way that I could do it was to learn this stuff. Because if I didn't learn it, I wouldn't be able to share it. I wouldn't be able to tell the story. So I knew that no matter how hard it was going to get, that this was something that I had to do. Because I think that if you can kind of take a mirror and put it up in a way that's not judgmental, I think that that's a good thing to do in the world. Okay? It's a difficult thing to learn how to do well. All right? But there's a process to it. So that's just my little rant about that. The point of it is that if you come at it from that angle, okay, that this is not something that, I have to do it because by this age I have to have this much money in the bank and I have to be at this station in life and I have to be recognized and blah, 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 blah. It's a recipe for failure. It becomes part of who you are, this process. You think about it. The Vogler book is going to be tremendously helpful to you because I think that when you read about the hero's journey and character archetypes and all of the different elements of cinematic storytelling, it's very relatable to life. And it's going to help you understand your own journey. And the process that you're going to go through in getting your story from here and then down into screenplay form and all of the different steps you have to take along the way, it kind of replicates the whole hero's journey model. Because you're going to go through thresholds. There's going to be tests everywhere you look. Cynicism until you get something done. It's just part of dealing with it. Rejection. And here's another thing that you need to keep in mind. Make a friend of rejection. Make a friend of rejection. Make a friend of it. Learn who your allies are. Keep them close to you. And people that are not your allies, that's okay. It's the whole law of attraction thing where they can be who they want, but they're going to be that from over there. You're going to keep that away from you, which is why I also advise quiet is best. The more you keep this close to you, the more stuff you put in here as you're going through your day, the more the less trouble you're going to have writing your story. I'll put it that way. Because these things, I have dozens of them through the years. Write notes every day. You're writing notes every day, and then comes the moment where you finally meet somebody that is going to make your movie. Well, where's the screenplay? I'm going to have it for you in 2 weeks. I want to give you a cleanup copy. Sat right down, wrote the treatment, and because I had a bunch of these all over the place, it was whoosh. It just flew off my fingers and onto the page. And everyone says, well, you did that really fast. Well, no. The first draft was written in 1994. It's not really fast. Okay? I've had a lot of discussions during the lunch period about, with a number of you, how do I get past the gatekeepers? How do I get somebody to make my movie? There was a piece of advice that somebody gave me a long time ago that I bought into. if you want an apple, don't grab it from the bushel, you take it from the tree. So you need to get yourselves close to someone who can help you make your picture, someone who can say yes and write a check to make your picture. Now, I get asked about crowdfunding a lot. I'll tell you a little story. When I first came here a couple of years ago, I personally was going to finance a large portion of the project that we're going to start shooting in August. It's called The Summer Dance. And a large chunk of that was coming out of my own pocket with the thought that, okay, well, I'm going to crowdfund a portion and I'm going to finance a portion for myself. When it came right up against it, I had to ask myself the question, do I want to come out of my pocket with tens of thousands of dollars and not be able to finish my project? David Mamet, and the book is called On Directing Film. So you're all screenwriters. Why am I telling you to read this book? The reason I'm telling you this book is it is one of the best breakdowns on how to write a screenplay that I think I've ever read. And I think that you'll find it very encouraging because his mindset is such and his belief system is such that, listen, schools are great. I've benefited tremendously from schools. I fought very hard to complete my education. Without boring you with the drama of my life story, I had to leave school in the 9th grade. I snuck into college. I got a master's degree. I fought very hard to get my education, okay? I was very fortunate to go to the American Film Institute in Los Angeles, and I've been really blessed. But David Mamet's philosophy is that you can learn these things by doing them. If you want to be an actor, you can go down to the local theater, get the smallest part that you can in a play, work on your craft. If you want to work in the film business, start out as a PA and work your way up. You can do it. Doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, and when you start, as long as you keep doing it, doing it, doing it. If you are fortunate enough to have a place like this in your backyard, that is great. And I strongly recommend you take advantage of any program that Trident has, because there's not many places like this in the country. Trust me when I tell you that. I live in Connecticut where they have this big movement called Hollywood East, and it's such a joke. Let me tell you. Listen, I'm going on the record and telling you that. I see more dedicated people down here and more real filmmakers down here than I do up there, okay? So take advantage of all the education you can. But back to David Mamet's reference here. The reason that I'm recommending this book is because he talks about how to render scenes so that a director will understand them on the page in a clear manner and will appreciate the fact that you've taken the steps to write for the director. On Directing Film by David Mamet. Okay. And by the time you're done reading it, you will have a thorough knowledge of the concept of entering a scene late, leaving early, and exiting with a question, and entering with an answer, which he also talks about. So if you exit a scene with a question, let me give you an example. How many people here have seen the movie Silence of the Lambs? Okay, so Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster, goes down to the institution. And there's a moment there where she's leaving the FBI and she's talking to her, excuse me, she's talking to her mentor at the I almost said the American Film Institute, at the FBI. That's a Freudian slip, huh? Oh, boy. So she's getting ready to go down there and go to the institution where Hannibal Lecter is locked up. She's leaving the FBI. And she poses a question. Well, what's he like? And as we're watching her at the FBI, we cut to the visual of the exterior shot of the prison. And then we hear the voiceover of, oh, he's a monster, which is uttered by the character that we're about to meet in the very next shot, which is Clarice in the office of the director of the institution. So we're exiting with a question, what's he like? And we're entering with an answer visually. Exit with a question, what happens? Enter with the visual answer. In the piece that I've just written, there's a page in there, I'll just tell you about it, where the mother of the lead character is off in Europe, on her vacation. She's ditched her son, and unbeknownst to her, he's working at a summer camp for underprivileged kids. And the husband calls her in Europe, and they're talking on the phone, and she asks, well, how's our son? And the next thing that we see on the screen is all of his belongings have been taken out of the suitcase, which now lies empty on the bed, and he's been completely vandalized, and he's left with a pair of shorts and a pair of flip-flops and a t-shirt as his sole clothing for the rest of the summer. And the answer, oh, he's having a great time. But we're exiting with the question, and we're entering the next shot with an answer. So the degree to which you can do that, that's where the visual storytelling and the juxtaposition comes in. So the degree to which you can do that will help you more effectively move your story along. And David Mamet gets into a much more descriptive and a much more in-depth discussion of that in the book on directing film. Now, there's another David Mamet book that you should also buy, especially for those of you who, like all of us, look, you want to make a movie. You're not going to dedicate your life to this craft and go for the base hit. You want to swing for the fence. If you're going to spend this much time and this much effort and this much energy on this, swing for the fence. So if that's the goal, you want to know about trying to get your foot into the business. And one of the best books that exists on this subject is called Bambi versus Godzilla by David Mamet. Bambi, I'll write it down for you. No, it's okay. I know it's a pretty incredible title, but it's called. There you go. Great book. Trying to think of another book that would work well for you. That's about the best one that I could recommend for you. It debunks a lot of the myths and stereotypes about getting your leg through the door, getting your foot through the door in Hollywood. But the objective is always to place yourself in proximity, get yourself around people who can say yes to your project. There's a whole art and a whole science. I can only tell you what has worked for me so far, and every one of your paths is going to be different. There's no one secret where, and don't let anyone ever sell you this, because there's people out there that will try and sell you on this. There's no single key to the door. Everybody's experience is going to be different. You're going to go about it in different ways. And your path and your path and your path are all going to be different. There are some principles that if you stick to, you can get to where you need to go. But again, there's no single thing, but the principle is you need to get yourself taken seriously by people who have the power to make decisions. Now, there are events that you can attend. Some are better than others. One of those, it's taking place in Los Angeles in about a month. It is the Producers Guild of America Produced by Conference. It takes place in Los Angeles every year. It also takes place in New York. And what's great about that is you have only the top A-list people who are present there. The options that they offer is the opportunity to take place in a roundtable discussion with people who actually make studio films. Now, we're talking today about the realm of the independent world. But these are people who make studio films, and you actually get to sit with them and talk with them and exchange business cards with them. But now you've got what we refer to a little chip in the big crap game, okay? Because once you've made the contact, the objective is not to pitch to them right then and there. The objective is to maybe make them relax, you're relaxed, business card, can I have a 15-minute meeting? Okay? You're not going to ask for, well, can I? They know you're going to come pitch to them. You're not going to do it right there at the table. But what you're going to do is set up a 15-minute meeting at another time. So now, and yes, this stuff is all expensive, and that sucks. But now, if you've got a pitch with a producer or their development executive on a lot, have you bought your way through the door? Maybe. But if you're going to do that, do it in a meaningful way. Do it in a way where you know that there might be a result at the end of it. Okay? But these are people that have, that make films, that make studio films. So it's the Producers Guild of America. If you bring it up on your phones, whatever, you can see it's PGA, produced by conference. Okay, and to me, that is one of the few exceptions to that rule. It's a P. It's not. You have to be careful because you don't want to wind up with golfers, but it's the Producers Guild of America. Here, hold on. Let me make this easy for you guys. Okay. It is a very worthwhile gathering. I know that this year Oprah Winfrey is speaking there. You just have all the huge names are there. They have meet and greets. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's a trip to Los Angeles. And if you're taking, if you're taking your career seriously and you can save up, it's worth it. It's especially if you've not been on a movie lot before. I think it's a valuable experience for you, and it's very worthwhile, and I strongly recommend it. Obviously, Sundance, some of the larger festivals, and Tribeca all have screenplay competitions, and when you're entering a screenplay competition, stick with the bigger festivals. Don't go with the South Porcupine Film Festival in oh God, there's a million of them in the Northeast, and it sickens me, and I have to tell you why. There are these entry fees, okay? Oh yeah, $75 entry fee, and you'll get your script read, and you'll get your script covered, and 99% of the time the person doing that in these not very well-known festivals are people that have never worked a day in their life on a movie studio lot, and have never been on the desk at 7:30 in the morning when the phone's ringing and having to do coverage all day long. Yes, over here. The question is, if you go to one of these events, do you bring your feature length, or do you bring whatever it is you've got? So you always want to have samples of your writing ready and available, okay? But if you're going to one of these, you're not going to get a major producer to make your short film unless they really like the idea and they want to develop it into a feature. And then, if that's the case, you need to have that with you and ready. Okay? Because you're not going to those places to make a short film. But one of the wonderful things, and I don't mean to keep harping back, but one of the wonderful things about this event and this competition is if you're going out there and you've got a rockin' short film under your arm, that is big time. I don't think it's a bad idea to attend and learn and network with these people because you're standing in line for lunch, and there's Jane Rosenthal who produces all of, she started as Robert De Niro's assistant. Now she runs the Tribeca Film Festival. So there it is. You're there with her. What are you going to do? Try and get a meeting? You're not going to start pitching right there to somebody of that magnitude. They would take that as an insult. Somebody earlier told me the story about meeting Jerry Bruckheimer, and was it you? And he immediately puts his hands on his ears. The reason they do that is they don't want to get sued. They don't want to make something similar, and all of a sudden they're in this legal situation. Okay, so you want to make sure that number one, everything is registered, and you want to set up a meeting. Now, another thing that's extremely important: never ever show work that is not ready to be shown. If you know that screenplay needs work and it's not ready to be shown, don't show it. if you have the opportunity to stall and get it ready to be shown, I'll have the draft for you in a week. I'm in the middle of finishing my last draft. Whatever you've got to think on your feet. You're going to try and make it as tight as you can before you give it to them. And here's why. If you're giving them something that's 130 pages or 124 pages, they're going to get scared off because length nowadays, I mean, I just turned in my first draft that I gave to the producers that I'm working with now. My first draft was 120 pages. And I thought that was great because I'd gotten that down because I knew I had to, and I didn't want it to be more than 120. And thankfully they liked it and got back to me, can you cut it down to 105? That's a lot of cutting to do. So I went back at it, and now on top of that he's asking me to make certain changes. So now I'm burdened with trying to add things at the same time that I'm trying to cut things. So I made all the changes he wanted me to make. I cut down wherever I could. I went through it 10 times to cut down as much as I could, and I was able to get it down to 114. And at that point, I had to make a really hard choice because if I'm not giving him, I don't want to distance him, I don't want to piss him off and not give him his 105, but if I'd cut down to 105, I would have lost a lot of the story. There was just no way to complete the story and get it down to 105. So I called him. I said, look, I did A, B, C, D, and E, and my only concern is that it's 114. And he was thrilled with it. But when you get somebody that's interested and you want to pump it up, you definitely want to, and again, it's not to fill the white space on the page, but you want it to be sparkling. You know, you want to make it as tight, and you want to make it as descriptive as you possibly can. So when you've written whatever it is, 8 or 10 drafts of your screenplay, well, let's say it's even 5 drafts of your screenplay, and you're trying to get it out there in the world, and then suddenly somebody bites on it, and it's somebody legitimate, and it's somebody that you know that can make the film, the whole atmosphere changes. Because now you're pretty much, you know, especially once they option your screenplay, which we're going to get into in a couple minutes, now you're writing for hire, and you want to give them what they want. So if they ask you to pump it up in this area, you have to do it. You need to. I have found that they look at page 1. Is it grabbing me? And when I used to read for a living, you know, I'd get in at 7:30 in the morning, and by 7:45 I was reading, you know, after taking care of phone stuff and all that. And by page 1, I knew if the writer knew what they were doing. When I was at Paramount, I read a script called Air Force One, and page 1, it was my first day there. I'll never forget it. And at the end of page 1, my jaw was on the floor. The descriptions were so good. And by page 3, it was like, it was enthralling to read. And it's exciting when you get a script like that in your hands, because it's special, because most of what you read is not, frankly, I have to be really frank with you, most of them don't create that response. So by page 5, I interrupted their meeting. And they thought it was just, you know, me being excited because it was my first day. It was at Prelude Pictures, and it was owned by Mike Ilitch Jr., whose family owns the Detroit Red Wings. Never forget. And I think that when I showed up, I was going to the American Film Institute at the time, and I showed up for the intern interview. And I was wearing a Detroit Red Wings baseball cap, not knowing who he was. I'm pretty sure that's why I got the gig. Gordie Howe, all the way. So anyway, I interrupted a meeting, and they were all like, "Oh, it's your first day. Just, you know, calm down." And I was like, "If you guys don't buy this, somebody's going to, and they're going to make a lot of money with this film, because it was just laid out amazingly well." And that was I think my 4th job as a reader in the town. But the story goes, you know, Harrison Ford, huge movie, big success. But to your question, yes, they will flip through it. And yes, by page 1, they have to see this. I don't think that if they're liking what they see on page 1, they go to page 10, they're a little bit, you know, not quite sure where it's going, I don't think it's going to wind up in the garbage. But what they will do, and what I used to do, it's page 1. How does it look? Then I'll turn to the end and see how it finishes up. And when you're reading these over and over and over and over again, you're reading screenplays all day long, and you're writing coverage all day long, you get to learn, and it's a rhythm. You get to see how things unfold, and you know by flipping around, just like in 5 minutes, I can tell you if the thing is worth reading or not. But if I get past that first couple of minutes with it, and I'm looking at it, I pick it up, page 1, grabs me, look to the back, I see the plot solution there on somewhere 110, 115. I see that. Then I'll read all the way through. And if I read all the way through and I'm on board for the whole thing and I really like it, it's going to get a favorable grade. I want to talk a little bit, before we completely run out of time, I want to talk to you about coverage, about what it looks like, what studio coverage looks like. Basically, it's a sheet of paper and it has this stuff on it. Make sure you can see. It has your name. It has a title. Actually, it's backwards. There's my dyslexia again. It's the title. It's your name. It's the genre. It's the length. And then on this side of the page, it's budget. And then era. And then it's evaluation. And this is either pass or low recommend or recommend. And then underneath this is the log line and then a synopsis. And then at the end of the synopsis, I want to make sure you guys can all see that. So sorry about this. At the end of the synopsis, they write their reaction, what they think you should do with it. On the highest end of this, I've seen, let's buy this before somebody else does. On the low end of this, I've seen, no one should ever make this movie and no one should ever hire these writers. Actually seen that more than once on a page. Because this is another thing in terms of getting your foot in the door out there. If you go to one of these events, or you go to an event where that is populated by decision makers, the assistants are your best friend. Be nice to them. I can't tell you when I was out there how many times someone came my way that was recommended and they were crappy to me because, oh, you're just an assistant. Okay. They generally don't get treated very well. They generally don't make a lot of money. They're generally very overworked. And they generally are very underappreciated. And after doing that for 2 years, they're generally making a picture somewhere. That's how it works. So when you do your reach outs, which is God, I just wish we had more time, but there are ways to make contact with the assistants, and one of the main ways to make contact with the assistants is to attend some of these higher end festivals that exist, because usually the assistants will come along because the moguls, for lack of a better word, they're contracted to be there and to take part in certain events, but the assistants are there to shield them and handle people running up to them and saying, read my script, hear my pitch, is there any way to get a 15-minute meeting? But less is more, and subtle is always the best way to go. Okay, so when you meet with them, remember, the objective is not to pitch your idea right there on the spot. That's not the objective. The objective is to get a meeting. Okay, and once you get a meeting, they don't care where you come from, who you are, it's what have you got and will it work? And that's the sole determinant. So you want to have a log line that works really well. Does everybody have this? okay? But it's that cold. When I would write my coverage reports, the producer would come in on Monday. There'd be a pile of these on his desk, and he'd read through them one at a time. Here's a pass, 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 here's a low recommend, there's a pass, there's a pass, there's a recommend. Why is it a recommend? So now they're reading the coverage to see why it's a recommend. And then out of those maybe 1 or 2 scripts that are either low recommend or recommend, okay, who's in town and who are we calling in and why are we calling them in? And is this something that fits for us? And if and only if it's something that fits, A, they have, are they going to have the time to do it? Or if it's something that they think that they can sell and make a lot of money on, make inexpensively and make a lot of money on, then you get a meeting. So this is a studio model here. This is how studios work. Okay, but outside of this, how do you meet people who can say yes to you? Well, how many of you here, in any part of your work, how many of you have jobs where writing is part of what you do? That's really good. That's a really high number. One of the things that I did when I moved back east was I decided, a long story, I attended Robert McKee's course, and I had a very interesting experience there, which I'll spare you because we don't have a lot of time and I want you to get more information. But I decided that I was going to start teaching just to keep my mental health where it needed to be. And I was going to start to write film criticism because some of the criticism that I'd been reading, frankly, I could tell was written by folks that had never been on a movie set before. So I started writing film criticism. So I wrote for one publication in New England called Imagine Magazine. It's a trade publication. And then I started writing for a magazine that's now in its 8th year called Venue Magazine, which is based in Connecticut. We distribute in New York, Florida, Los Angeles, and it's pretty good distribution right now. We have about 100,000 subscribers. You can look up the magazine online. There's no E in Venue, though. We leave it off. It's VENU. So it's one word, Venue Magazine. So through that, I've gotten to interview some really cool people. And when you go to these premieres, guess who's there? Everybody. So through that, I've been able to make a lot of connections, and I booked a few jobs here and there. But one of the ways to get close to people who are making films at the budget level, the independent budget level, is to attend premieres. Get yourself to a premiere, get yourself there early. A better way, if there's a publication or publications that maybe don't have a film section and you think they would benefit, take a couple practice runs. Learn how to write film criticism, be objective. Look at some of the films that you've seen and read the reviews, and then think to yourself, how would I review this film? How would I write it? How would I write a review of this film? And then find a place to just start working. It's a small foot in the door, but it's going to do 2 things for you. It's going to keep you writing, even if it's your own blog. It's going to keep you writing. It's going to keep your literary muscles tight. It's going to keep you involved in the subject matter, B. And you're going to get to meet people. You're going to get to meet people who can, who you can develop a relationship with and maybe someday work with. That's how it works. It's about, now I hate to throw this word networking around because it sounds like, oh yeah, well we're just going to go, it's a networking opportunity, like it's this latchkey operation that you just turn the door and all of a sudden everybody's going to be thrusting 3-picture deal contracts in your face. You have to be creative about it. You have to be intuitive about it, and you have to be aggressive about it. But you also need to be subtle about it. You have to be very careful when you're approaching a gatekeeper, and the assistants in Hollywood, believe me, every one of them are gatekeepers. okay? Because if you can't get past them, you're not getting anywhere. So it's a really good idea not to piss them off. There are databases. I think IMDb has a database, and there's a few databases out there. If you email me, I know that that's changed recently. There used to be a terrific publication called the Hollywood Creative Directory, which I don't know that it exists anymore. And there are a couple of paid services out there that provides you with names of the producers and their assistants. And I haven't used it in a while. If you email me, I can find some things out for you and email it to you. And they're expensive. But if you know that your film is of a certain genre and is of a certain budget level and can't really be done independently, and you want to try and make it as a studio film and you need to get through to these people, you have to be really aggressive about trying to get next to these people. And if it's not fun, you shouldn't do it. And to me, the sport, the competition, the sport of getting somebody, finding that person, I viewed it the way I viewed any sport that I played growing up, whether it was hockey or boxing, which is two sports that I did. But to me, I didn't look at it as, oh my God, I have to do this or I'm going to be a failure. And if I don't make this film, I'm going to be a failure. I needed to tell this story. Sometimes I felt more than I could breathe, which is why I decided I was just going to try and gather the money myself to do it. And when we shut down last summer, I thought, okay, well, we're going to put it down, we're going to retrench, regroup, and re-energize, and we're going to visit it next summer. And I just kept writing, and I just kept looking around for people that I would meet at these various events that might be suited to make this film. The question was, do you negotiate to keep your writing credit? And the answer is yes. You fight like hell for that. They wanted me to have my credit based on Writers Guild of America standards and protocols, which was a fancy way of saying if they give it to someone else to work on, that my credit could be kind of diluted, where it became, give me a second here, where it became, it would be story by and then screenplay by. I wasn't having that. Not after 20, 25 years, I wasn't having that. So that was the one moment that I dug in. And I said, listen, I can deal with A, B, and C, but this is non-negotiable. This belongs to me, and I am the writer of record, and I'm not sharing writing credit. And going in, that was my only, everything else was negotiable because you want to make your film. But that was my only line in the sand. I am the sole writer of record here, and you can send it to other writers, and you can send it to a script doctor, which I'm not happy about it, but which is something that they do because that's just what producers do, because they've all got a circle of people around them that doctor scripts. I wasn't happy about that, but okay, I have to accept it. But in terms of that credit, yes, you fight for that. And you dig the line in the sand in that. And I have a really good friend out in Los Angeles whose name is John Heinsohn, terrific guy. He works with the Producers Guild. And it had been a while, and I needed good representation. And I called a wonderful lawyer out there, Rochelle Marinis. And we got it hammered out. And we presented them with an answer. And they went for it. But yes, I had to argue for it. I think the core of your question was, what do you do about that situation in terms of credit? Was that basically the thrust of it?
I mean, if you're a first-time writer,
Yes. Yes.
You
Well, here's the thing. I've done some things that I've been paid for that haven't made it to production, and it's a frustrating grind. But they were all slated to be bigger budget things. But this I knew going in, because the story's so personal to me, that I wasn't going to share credit for it. And there's trade-offs for that. They might come back with, well, okay, but if that's the case, then it's only X number of points on the end, or you have to give us unlimited rewrites. And I'm like, bring it, fine. I'll tell you this one thing before we go. It's old Hollywood joke. There's this, sorry for you guys, it was the second time that's going to hear this, but there was this screenwriter in Hollywood, and he was a big A-list guy living in Beverly Hills, and he got hired to write a big movie. So he had 90 days to deliver, so he kisses his wife goodnight, and he tiptoes down to the workroom, and he sits at the typewriter, and he types fade in, and he's blank. He's completely blocked. He can't write a thing. So the next night, kisses his wife goodnight, goes down to the typewriter, same thing happens. So now it's going on and on and on and on, and he's drinking, and he hasn't shaved, and his hair's grown out, and he can't get anything done. He's a day away from having to deliver, and he's got nothing in writing. So on the last night, he goes down there, and there's this little elf sitting there, and typing away. There's an elf typing the guy's screenplay. So he's like, okay, walks away, comes back in the morning, and on the table, wrapped in a bow, is a screenplay. So he goes down to Paramount, and he delivers it. Next afternoon, they love the script so much, it's front page of the Hollywood Reporter. They hire him to write another one for double the money, and he's thrilled, and his life is wonderful. So he goes back, he tries to write the second one, fade in, he's still blank. Same thing happens. So he goes through another 89 days of this. So finally, on the 90th day, he tiptoes down, and there's the elf again. And he says, listen, I want to thank you for saving my career. Elf says, that's wonderful, thank you. Writer says to him, is there anything that you'd like me to do for you, get for you? Elf says, what do you have in mind? And the writer says, well, I got a beautiful Rolls-Royce Corniche out there. He's like, well, I'm kind of short. I can't really use a Rolls-Royce Corniche. He says, well, they just gave me $15 million to write this. I'll give you half. He says, I don't really use money. I float in and out of this reality. So the writer says to him, well, what do you have in mind? And the elf says, how about this? How about screenplay credit? The writer looks at him and says, what are you, crazy? Get the hell out of my house. Old Hollywood joke. Maybe I didn't tell it that well. I thought it was cute. Okay, well, listen, listen, I love coming down here to see you guys, and I hope I get to come back soon. I always have a wonderful time, and I really appreciate all of your questions. And what I'm going to leave you with is that, this is a lonely thing that you're going to do here. It's a lonely and sometimes painful thing. It takes a long time sometimes, okay? You've got really good resources around you. I strongly suggest if you have the wherewithal to submit a script for this competition, you should do it, because if you win it and you make your film, you're going to have a beautiful piece of work that's going to open doors for you. Just remember that it's being done every day by people who do this by themselves and for themselves. And if I can do this, any of you can do it. Thank you very much for coming out, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, guys.